Hello everyone and welcome to my top picks for the new upcoming set, Phyrexia All Will Be One. The first color I'll be taking a look at is white colored cards, and I'll be going over each of the colors in another video. The criterias for what makes it into my top picks are 1. Individually strong card, 2. Has synergy, the card may be weak, but considering other cards it could be good in the format. And 3, a card that is unique and has interesting build around with potential. And this will be for historic and explorer only and not going to be for standard. So with that in mind, let's talk about the first card from my list coming at number 5. Number 5, we got Ossification. It is a 2-mana enchantment aura where it says enchant basic land you control. When Ossification enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker on opponent control until Ossification leaves the battlefield. And for a 2-mana enchantment, being able to exile a target creature or planeswalker is a pretty strong ability. But the fact that this says enchant basic land instead of enchant basic land types is one of the big reasons why it's not on the top of the list and rather in the bottom of the list, meaning that this can't be attached to something like Hallowed Fountain, for example, to exile something. It has to be exactly basic lands, such as plains or mountains, for example. And let's say if you are trying to play this in a control deck, it doesn't pair up nicely with something like Farewell, since if you read Farewell, it exiles creatures first, then enchantment next, which would leave the creatures on the battlefield after wiping out the board. But one thing this card does have is the fact that we are playing in a format with Fabled Passage. It does pair up pretty nicely, so even if you are playing a multicolored deck, with something like Fabled Passage, it does seem like it would have some potential. And coming up at number 4, we have Mondrak Glory Dominus. This is a 4-mana legendary creature, a Phyrexian horror with a stat 4/4. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. And you can also pay 1 colorless source with 2 Phyrexia mana into sacrificing 2 other artifacts and or creatures. You can put an indestructible counter on Mondrak. Now, I don't exactly know if this will go into a powerful deck, but I do think that if there will be a token-based powerful deck, this will probably be in it. And I do think this is a pretty unique build around for a deck, being able to play a bunch of tokens and later on giving this card indestructible. Especially if you lead from Wedding Announcement into Mondrak, you'll be creating 2 tokens on the following turn. And if you go back to historic, there's also things like Pyromancer, generating a bunch of tokens, and a powerful token-based enchantment called Intangible Virtue to buff up those creatures. So I am happy to try out whether or not Mondrak will be playable in Explorer or Historic. And coming up at number 3, we got an Annex Sentry. This is a 3-mana artifact creature. It has Toxic 1, which means that if a player is dealt damage by this creature, they get a poison counter. When this card enters the battlefield, you can exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or less until this card leaves the battlefield. We've had a bunch of cards that are of similar effect before, such as Brutal Cathar, Skyclave Apparition recently. So I do already think that this card will probably be good, but probably not that good in something like Standard, for example. But in Historic and Explorer, considering that all the creature decks are going to be playing Collected Company, the mana value of those decks are going to be from 1 to 3. So I do expect this card to be pretty good. And this does have a relevant typing, Cleric, which is interesting since in a deck such as Angel, with something like Righteous Valkyrie, it does take into account Cleric typing, so maybe the Angel decks would replace something like Cyclave Apparition. And lastly, if toxic decks ever become a thing, this will probably be in it. And coming up at number 2, we got Khemba Ka Enduring. This is a 2-mana legendary creature with a stat 2/2. Whenever this enters the battlefield or another cat enters the battlefield under your control, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to that creature. Equipped creatures you get +1/+1, And for 5 mana, you can create a 2/2 white cat creature token. So already this has a very strong effect when this comes down, letting you attach an equipment that you have on the battlefield to Khemba itself. So if you curve out from something like a Colossus Hammer on turn 1 into Khemba, you can see that you can attach the Colossus Hammer right onto Khemba without any problems, making it into a huge creature. But the problem that I see with this card is that if you don't draw an equipment spell such as the Colossus Hammer on turn 1, then it is kind of hard to curve out into Khemba, since if the Khemba is on the board already without any equipment, it is just a vanilla 2/2 creature that isn't quite doing anything. And another problem that I see is that are any of the other cats any good in the format? But the fact that you can technically get a really powerful creature on turn 2 if you do curve it out, hammer into Khemba, I do suspect that this will be quite degenerate. And if you do ever get to 5 mana, you can start creating a 2/2 tokens, which will be a cat token. So if another cat comes onto the battlefield, it'll attach a hammer to the cat. So I do suspect that this card will be played, especially in Pioneer, where Sigarda's Aid is available. And as soon as Historic and Explorer gets Sigarda's Aid from Pioneer, we should be seeing this deck a lot more. And finally, coming up at number 1, and this is my favorite card in white, it's called Skrelv Defector Mite. It's a 1 mana legendary artifact creature, Phyrexia Mite with the stats 1/1. It has Toxic 1, and Skrelv Defector Mite can't block if you pay the Phyrexia mana, and by tapping itself, you can choose a color. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color, also can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. So essentially what it is it's going to be gaining protection from certain color for this turn. And this effect is what makes this card so powerful. If you have a creature that is big and large, you can use this card's effect to basically give evasion to get through opponent's defenses. And of course, another usage is to just use this card to protect your creature. So I do think that because it's so flexible, it is going to be very powerful in many of the decks. I do believe it'll be played in Affinity, perhaps Aura decks, or even Hammer Time. And again, if Toxic is ever good, this will probably be in it, since most of the toxic creature are of low power. So this being able to give evasion is going to be vital for their game plan. But that is going to be it for my top 5 white cards of the set. Tell me what you guys think. These are my personal favorites from the set, and I would love to know what your favorites are from the color white in the set as well. And as always, if you found this helpful or enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.